can't hear you, Brian. You're talking, but there are no words. There you are.
I'm all over the place tonight. Good evening, everyone.
We're off to a great start.
Yeah. And welcome back, everyone, to another night of the 12 Beers of Christmas craft beer experience presented by Brewing. Once again, I'm your host, Brian, and I am joined again by my co-host, Julie. How's it going, Julie?
Good. How are you? Hi, everybody. I wasn't here yesterday, but I'm back again, and I'm super excited about it. Always a fun time. So Brian, I think we used to have a box cam, right? But we're not doing that this year. We're just gonna show a beer. We got a beer tonight.
Yes. This is box cam. This cam right here.
Box cam.
Yeah.
I love that.
Rest in peace, box cam. Yes. So got another beer. We can still open it. Show it like this box.
You look like you demolished that box.
Yeah,
that's what mine looks like too, honestly. It's just
I think last year,
like a present.
Well, last year it was on box cam and it sat on the table and it was real. I opened it real gently and carefully, and like this year I'm just like, I got it up here, it's rubbing against the mic, it's annoying everybody at home. So here we go. Oh, that is very funny. Jay Moon said, interesting that Julie ducked out for the hazy night. That was not planned, but
it was not planned that way. But yes, you remember how I feel. So this is for my box cam, Brian. We talked about this. So because I don't want my beer to get warm, I dig up a cooler that belongs to my son, and then I put beer in it with an ice pack. And this is what we'll do for box cam. Is we're gonna open the monkey. This is a new saying. We're gonna open the monkey, Brian. What do we have in here? What do we have in the monkey?
This wonderful Helles, Bavarian style Helles from our friends at Von Ebert. Beer just went all over my desk. Yes.
No.
Oh no. I have a nice Pilsner glass tonight. There's been lots of talk about proper glassware, lots of talk about funny glassware. So I figured I had to bring out my most ridiculous glass at least once. Oh my God, a ridiculous pour for a ridiculous glass.
I sense a theme of ridiculousness tonight. What is on your glass, Brian? I don't recognize it.
It's a lava.
Hold it up. Gotta hold it up. A lava lamp?
Yeah.
Ah.
It pops inside of it.
Ooh.
It's from, oh, you guessed it. It's from Dancing Gnome.
Nice. Oh, look, I almost spilled it too. What are we doing tonight? My goodness.
Sloppy.
This is pretty. This is nice. Like the color of this is beautiful. It's so pale.
It is, yes. Jay Moon is
quite
a very large stonga. How do you?
Stonga.
Stonga? No, it is not. It's what they call a Pilsner glass. So you see it kind of tapers in the middle there. Has a very wide, heavy bottom. Kind of gets a little skinnier up towards the top there. But great for pouring nice foamy Pilsners, Helleses, Kolsch's, even though, yeah, you should drink your Kolsch out of a Stonga. Say, cheers, everyone.
You know why I always put on that voice? A Stonga. This is I'm drinking it out of an IPA glass just because I really like this shape. It's similar. It's like taller and skinnier, but
yeah,
it's like, yes, cheers.
Company glass. Cheers. Cheers, everybody.
That is good. I've gotten really into like Helles lagers and Kolsch's lately. I feel like they're pretty similar in kind of like the taste profile. This is a good one. Nice, like that. The finish on it is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, you get really nice crackery base malt taste.
Yeah, like bready.
But there's depth to it. And that has something to do with this D word.
This word.
Concocted.
The Sesame Street.
Yes.
The word of the night.
Don't get me started. I've been watching so much Sesame Street with my daughter. I'll start singing the songs. Or even worse, I'll bring her in here. Or maybe even better, I'll bring her in here and she can sing the songs. That'll be an entertaining night, right?
That would be awesome. She is adorable.
George says, LOL, Sesame Street. Yes, Sesame Street is wonderful. So, as always, we have our chat moderator with us tonight. Ben is back for another night. He's here to help us facilitate audience questions. So feel free to use the chat to start conversations, comment on your own tasting notes, and engage with everybody else in the chat. Remember, if you have a question that you'd like us to answer tonight, please be sure to use the handy Q&A feature, and our friendly chat moderator, Ben, will let us know that you got questions. Hey, Ben, how's it going?
I'm doing fantastic. Since I've realized that I am the controversial food take generator since night one, I need everyone to know that I've been recovering from New Year's Eve by eating nothing but deep dish pizza. So I'm sure everyone in the chat will fight about that for a few minutes, but I'm going to stay out of the pizza war. I am an enjoyer of all forms of pizza, and yeah, I'm feeling a lot better than I did the last time you talked to me.
Cool.
Good to hear. But what about pineapple on pizza?
I only like pineapple on pizza if it's paired with something really salty like anchovies.
I also love anchovies. I approve.
So come in with a mild food take and then just throw
Let's go to pineapple and anchovies. We just
pineapple and anchovy.
went off the deep end.
I also will readily admit that I was not here last night because it was hazy night. So no conspiracy there.
We both just stepped out. See ya. Enjoy your juice.
In the chat, Motor City Tim has a good question that everybody should answer. We're drinking a classic German style lager tonight. What is everybody's favorite German style beer? If you got a single German beer that you really love, like an Eyinger, Spaten.
Russ, my man.
I'm like a style.
I'm tied between Rausch beer and Schwartz beer. I love them both.
I like a classic German style Pilsner because I like all Pilsner. That's probably my favorite style lager. But if I had to pick one German style. Oh, actually, I take that back. Märzen. Take that back. Märzen for sure.
Nice. Steven says, really?
Really?
Really what? Really?
What's the problem? Beer? Yeah.
Really? They're both awesome. All right, so we have a decocted Helles, and we'll get into what that means in a second. This is from Von Ebert Brewing out of Portland, Oregon, which is also where the lovely Ben is from. So it's a Bavarian style Helles beer. And according to our handy dandy little tasting card that we have, it is made with high quality European base malts, giving this light beer a biscuity and, I love this word, herbaceous complexity. Pretty herbaceous. Cool. I think, George, somebody said they were having a Helles for the first time. Anybody else in the chat? Is this your first Helles that we have introduced you to? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. I feel it's a style that's definitely came roaring back in popularity. Mm-hmm. Something that was only kind of brewed by the breweries that were like, we brew German beers, and that's all we did. Like locally here in Pittsburgh, we have Penn, and they always, actually, I don't know if they always did a Helles. I don't think they did. I take that back. My example was just completely blown out of the water. Even it strengthened. Even the German focused breweries weren't doing them. But now I think, people are much like you and Ben are rebelling against the hazy and juicy finish beers and starting to go more to what they, brewers beers, beer drinkers beers, the classic styles. And I love seeing it. If I see a Helles on the board at a place, I'm ordering that. If they do that well, I'll order beer they brewed with cupcakes or whatever.
With cupcakes. Yeah, that's like the mark of a good brewery. If you can go in there and get just like a crisp, clean lager beer and it tastes amazing, then you know that they know what they're doing.
Yep.
Because like you can throw cupcakes in a stout, it probably will be fine. But like you can't hide the mistakes. I know we talked about that a couple of nights ago with like how you can hide mistakes with hops. Like with a beer like this, you really can't hide the mistakes.
So you loved the description so much, especially the word herbaceous. What are you getting from this beer? What are you picking out?
Herbaceous. I'm definitely getting more of that like biscuity cracker breadiness from it. I like it that it's like sweet, but it's not cloyingly sweet. Like it still kind of has a nice balance after the finish at the end. So that's what I'm getting. How about you?
Yeah, there's a very nice sweetness to it. It is only 4.8% alcohol, so there isn't a lot of room for a ton of residual sugar in it. So it's nice how much sweetness they packed into it without it being
too much
cloying.
Yeah, because I don't go for like super sweet stuff. So, but I'm liking this. It's really, really refreshing too.
Yes, very nice.
So that word decocted, our Sesame Street, this word begins with D, decocted. What does that mean, Brian? It has to do with how the beer is mashed, correct?
It does, actually. It is a traditional form of mashing coming from, any guesses? Yes, Germany. Of course, it originated in, I believe, the Bavaria region. And if you didn't know, mashing is a stage of brewing in which brewers are going to take milled grains, combine them with hot water in an effort to extract as much sugar from those grains as possible. This is going to give the beer our color. It's going to give the beer its sugar so the yeast can eventually ferment that and turn it into alcohol. It's also going to play with the hops and give you some complexities in the aromas and contribute greatly because, you know, at the end of the day, there's only 4 main ingredients. They all got to pull their weight. So normally when you mash in, you set your water at one temperature, you add those grains, you let it sit for about an hour, and then you separate those grains from that liquid, leave those grains behind, and then you boil the liquid, you add your hops, and that becomes your beer. Decoction is a traditional way of step mashing, where you mash at different temperatures, and predominantly, historically, was used as a way to raise the temperature of the mash. At different temperatures, you're extracting different enzymes and different chemical compounds and promoting the growth of certain compounds at different temperatures. So typically when you decoct, traditionally you would do it in 3 stages. One was called the acid rest, one was called the protein rest, and one was called the saccharification rest. So you would rest it at the acid rest. That would promote good acidity to extract starches out of there and promote a good pH for the beer. Protein rest would obviously give you your proteins, and the saccharification would give you your sugars. It's a fancy word for sugar stage.
Sugariness.
Yeah, sure, sugar something. And the way they would do this by raising the temperature is they would pull a portion of what is referred to as the thick mash. You know what the thick mash is, Julie?
I do not.
Yeah. So it's the porridgey part of the mash. It's scooping into the grains, taking mostly grains and a little bit of water. You would pull that off from the main mash and you would boil it and heat that. And that would also plump up some of the grains and possibly increase the likeliness of Maillard reactions, which will create bread-like flavors in the grain, and is one of the reasons this decocted Helles has so much depth to its character, when in actuality it's a very simple malt bill. They would do that 3 times, and every time they would add that boiling mash back into the main mash, it would raise the temperature to the next rest stage. Yeah, it's super labor intensive.
That's what it sounds like. I was going to say, like, do you know if a lot of breweries actually do that, or is it pretty unusual to have a beer like this that's like they specifically say it's decocted because it is more unusual to see?
Yeah, it is very labor intensive. It's equipment dependent for you to have to be able to have the ability to be able to pull that grist out of the mash and put it into a separate kettle to boil it and then return it back into the mash safely and sanitarily is really difficult. You have to have a system that's set up for that. If I think about it, the first breweries that come to mind are Notch in Massachusetts and Hill Farmstead in Vermont. And those are the 2 breweries that I've had most of the decocted beers from. The other one would be Von Ebert from out in Portland. I actually had a very similar beer to this when I got to visit Vom and Ebert. Right at the beginning, right at the end of the before times in like February of 2020.
Nice. Yeah, I need to make it out there. I've heard so many good things about Portland. I know the chat was blowing up a bit about, the awesome beer scene there. It definitely seems really amazing. I think I want to go take a city brew tour next time I'm in the area for sure. Somebody was asking about the grain bill that's in this, and I'm not sure what it is, but then someone else asked, what's a bill? Basically, the grain bill is the breakdown percentage of each type of malt that you're going to have in the beer. You can call it the grain bill. So, certain percent of, Munich malt, a certain percentage of Pilsner malt. Like there's different ones that you can kind of break it down that way. I'm not sure with this one what the specific ones are. I know they said that they were, what did they say, European style, European base malts, which is kind of vague. Maybe we could try to guess what that might mean.
Yeah, probably floor malted Pilsner, which is a special process in the malting process, another traditional labor intensive process. This is a brewer's beer. This is a brewer's nerd beer. Like this is one that they know they're not going to fly off the shelves like the crazy IPAs and the fruited sours. This is something that's a labor of love for them, most certainly. So they're going to choose the best malts that they can find. They're going to splurge a little extra on those. They're going to take their time with fermentation. They're going to take them time with a slow lager. And we'll get into why you need to lager beers tonight, because this is the first time that we've had some lagers in the box, but this will be the first time we really take a dive into lager brewing and what makes it different than ales. How about you, Julie? What's your experience with decocted beers? Is this the first time you've really ran into one, or?
It's probably not, but it's the first time that I've like specifically known that it was decocted and like thought more about what that means. So yeah, I think that it seems really cool. Have you tried it as a home brewer at all? Is it something that you can do as a home brewer? It sounds like it would be pretty tricky.
You can, and for many years that was the crew of brewers that was keeping decoction, I don't know if alive is the right way to put it, but they were the ones that most prominent in it. And still to this day, if you search decoction mashing on YouTube, I could not come up with a video of it happening in a professional setting. It was all home brewers doing it, which makes it a little easier. You're pulling a couple pounds of grain out, and you can just lift it out with you get a big soup ladle and wear a heat tempered glove and put it in there and scoop it out and put it into your separate kettle and boil it, and then just dump it back into your mash pretty easily, as opposed to a professional brewer who's going to have to move maybe a couple hundred, if not a couple thousand pounds of grain around to make that process happen.
Yeah. So a little bit more about Von Ebert. So again, we mentioned they're in Portland, Oregon. They opened in March of 2018, and it was actually named after one of the founders' great grandmothers, whose name was Ebert, who emigrated from Germany, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I did find out what I wanted to find out. You have had decocted beers. You know who decocts their lagers?
Who?
Bierstadt in Denver.
Ah, they were so good.
Yes.
I think that was my favorite place. Brian and I had the privilege of going to the Craft Brewers Conference in September. And yeah, Bierstadt their lagers were great. They had the smoked lager that I loved. I had to buy some to take home, check my bag home on the plane. It was so good. I had to have it.
Yeah, they typically, I thought I had a hunch, but yeah, they typically decoct most of theirs. And the reason a brewer is going to do this, like I said, historically, it was to raise the temperature in that step mash system. And, oh my God, surprise. And nowadays they're doing it to get a lot of character out of the beer, a lot of malt character from the beer. And funny enough,
it's Santa. Santa's here.
I'm so sorry. I panicked. I looked at the email and I was like, it says 8. I'm good to go for later. And I just because I was like, I think it's 5:30, but I messed it up. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
We are happy to have you.
Hi.
I saw
Hi,
the
Brian.
raised
Do you want
hand.
to do the introduction?
I will do the introduction. We have a guest tonight, everyone. We are joined tonight by Natalie Baldwin, who works for Breakside Brewing out in
Yes.
Portland, the same home as Von Ebert. Natalie, how's it going?
It's great. I'm having a great day. How about you guys?
Wonderful.
Doing awesome. All right. So I say let's dive into our interview questions. Yeah, do you have anything else you want to chat about, Brian?
We should stop because Julie, you threw to me and you wrote a very, very nice intro and I completely just like skipped over it. Would you like to read the nice intro that you wrote?
Read my nice intro. I
'cause-
forgot that I honestly forgot I wrote that because that was like
You did,
before
yeah.
Christmas.
I was
Everything
just like, yeah, I'll do it. Come on,
weird
let's
and
go.
Here we go.
discombobulated.
Flying by the seat of my pants. Let's go.
I'll give you a second while I read my pre-scripted introduction. We have an amazing guest tonight from another one of Portland's award-winning breweries to chat more about the area's beer scene, the Great American Beer Festival, and something I'm personally passionate about, being a woman in an industry full of beards and bros. No offense, Brian. Please welcome the production manager from Breakside Brewery, Natalie Baldwin. All right, so Natalie, we love to start off by asking everybody what their craft beer origin story is. Can you tell us yours?
Yeah. So it's actually like, I'll tell you all sorts of stuff, but it's special to me that I get to talk about, or you guys are drinking Von Ebert today. So I'll lace that in. But so I've been brewing for about 7 years, and I started out pouring beer at a little tap room. And the brewer there, I learned like how mathematic and intricate brewing was, because previously I just had no idea. I was like, beer's cool, and just had done some home brewing fairly chaotically and poorly, and so started learning a little bit more about beer, got a little bit more involved, and then had a friend, his name's Dave Fleming. He's like a Portland staple. He's like a guy that's been brewing here for decades and knows everyone everywhere. And he told a friend of mine, or a now friend of mine, at the time I didn't know him, they're like, Natalie's looking to get into beer more. And this was there was a brewery called Burnside looking for someone to like wash kegs and start to learn about beer a little bit more. And then this man named Sam came, who worked at Burnside, and we chatted a little bit, and he's ended up hiring me on at Burnside and worked there for a couple of years, and then got hired on at Breakside to do production brewing, and now I run the R&D program there. But the person who hired me on at Burnside is my now best friend, who is Sam Pecoraro, the brewmaster at Von Ebert.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like the small beer world.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool because he is one of the smartest people that I know. And he actually studied to be a lawyer and decided that he wasn't necessarily as passionate about that as he thought he might be, and ended up in the beer industry. And he's incredible and so intelligent. So I've learned so much from him over the years. And when he ended up leaving Burnside and working at the Commons for a couple of years before they closed. And then after the Commons closed, we worked together for a little bit in production at Breakside, and then sort of, went our ways again. So.
Wow. Yeah, a couple people in the chat are asking, is there any connection between Breakside, Burnside?
Isn't that a funny name? It's so Burnside is like the city or the street that dissects north and south in Portland. So Burnside Brewing was just on Burnside Street, and then Breakside is actually a ultimate frisbee term. So there's no correlation. They just were two B-side names in Portland, and there's a famous Portland bar, a little dive bar called B-side, just to throw it all in there and make it a little bit more spicy.
We are getting a little like weird sound on your audio. I don't know if you have Bluetooth headphones or something that's connected, but
I do. I can try without the headphones.
Yeah, let's try that. Yeah, we're
right.
Oh.
And we never saw Natalie get rid of their shoes.
How is that?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, much better.
How about now?
Thanks. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then now I can't hear you.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, great.
We'll gesture. We'll make
There
up
we go, yeah.
our own beer sign
We'll-
language.
We'll write our questions down. I'll grab my whiteboard.
Hold it up.
So you mentioned Von Ebert, you've mentioned Burnside, another brewery. You've mentioned a lot of stuff about the Portland beer scene already. Could you go further into the Portland beer scene? Because I got the opportunity to go to there. It seemed like a special scene. I'd love to hear your opinion as being somebody so ingrained.
Yeah. The Portland beer scene is pretty cool because we have a lot of the, people who started the craft beer movement, around here. A couple years ago, the Oregon Historical Society, I think it is who it was, they did a little event, or not event, they did I can't think of the word. They were establishing how important the Portland or the craft beer scene was to Oregon and Portland and just the whole state in general. And they ended up doing a family tree, and it was sort of like big breweries like Widmer, Deschutes, Full Sail. And it was the brewmasters there, and then people who had left those breweries and started other breweries. And it was sort of,
Oh, wow.
and McMenamins was on there too. So I definitely feel pretty lucky that we have these staple, big breweries that sort of were around for a long time. So we have some pretty cool industry leaders around, but all of those people, I think I feel very fortunate that it's not old school brewing without any innovation. I feel like we have a lot of really talented brewers around, like Sam and my boss, Ben Edmonds, who they have their thing, they work at the Brewers Guild, they work for the Brewers Association. So there's a lot of people are paying attention to what's going on, have their ear to the ground, but also, we're in a special place with raw materials and ingredients and stuff like that. So obviously a lot of people fly out here for hop selection, but it's a lot easier for us to do that time of year. But I think we're doing a lot of similar stuff to other people right now. People are getting pretty good at lager beer and staying innovative with hoppy beers, and just continuously trying to raise the bar through education and access. And I think that's pretty cool right now.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's really awesome. I love thinking about that access to, the ingredients that you have there is really cool. That's something that's unique about that area for sure. We do have a question in the chat that I wanted to touch on before we kind of go into the other ones that we have written. Someone was asking about kind of collaborations with Pink Boots in Portland. What's kind of your relationship with them, and have there been any really cool collaborations lately?
I am the co-chapter for the chapter leader for the Pink Boots chapter out here. A couple years ago, or I guess last year, my concept of time is so strange since the before times, before COVID and all that. But I think it was a year or two ago, we integrated Pink Boots with, it's not just beer anymore, it's distilling and cider now too. And so my cohort, the other chapter leader, her name's Caitlin. She is a distiller, and she makes brandy and stuff like that. But as far as collaborations go, it's sort of funny because the Pink Boots chapter started in Pink Boots started in Portland because Terry Ferendorf is the woman who started it all, and she's from Portland. And we've sort of become one of the least active chapters in the country, if not the world. We were almost we're at the verge of not having a chapter anymore. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. But, since we have a really established beer community here, a lot of times, since I've been a brewer, my friend Sam is a big reason for it, but he's given me the space to be a professional, and no one's expected anything less. And if anyone treats me like shit because I'm a woman, I have some people behind me. Not always the case, but I feel like I have a very safe place in the industry. And I think a lot of other women here in Portland, not everyone and not always, but I think we sort of just leaned on each other instead of the whole Pink Boots chapter in general. And then a couple of years ago, I got a scholarship to travel to Germany through Pink Boots, and it's sort of like we're like, oh, there's actually a lot of really cool stuff in here, community, access to education. And so we're sort of like restarting and kickstarting that and getting more involved with cider makers and distillers and stuff too. So I guess like our long story short, our Pink Boots chapter has been sort of quiet, but we're like getting back into doing that. And I know that Steeplejack and Great Notion just did a collaboration. I think they packaged the beer today, but the main thing is when we make beer and it's a Pink Boots collaboration, the money goes to our local chapter, whereas I think it was like 5 years ago, money would just go to like Maine Pink Boots. And so we can sort of like dictate how we want to spend money. That could be send people to CBC, the Craft Brewers Conference, or we could send people to Germany like I did. So we can kind of like, we can make money and help people have direct scholarship access, which is pretty cool. So we're getting back into that. We're going to try to do a bunch more next year. Definitely one on International Women's Day, and then try not to overpromise and underdeliver, but definitely getting back into collaborations for sure.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm a member myself, which I'm really excited about, because having been a home brewer for years and years and years, I couldn't actually join until I became what I do now, the experiences manager with Bruvana and our other companies. So it's really, really great to be a part of it for sure. So you mentioned the scholarship that you got through them. So what was the nature of the scholarship and what was that trip like? It sounds incredible.
Yeah, the scholarship was one that they've done for a handful of years. But what I did was, the scholarship was to go to Germany and visit a bunch of different traditional breweries to see things like, went down by the Austrian border and saw like a traditional wheat brewery. And then we saw some open fermentation breweries in really small towns. And we saw like cloisters, where nuns and places where monks brewed, that sort of thing. And then we went to like Weirmann, big maltster, and got to visit that. And that was like 8 days or something like that, traveled to a bunch of different cities and towns all over the place. And then Breakside actually sponsored me to travel on top of that. So I went to a bunch of different cities I went to like Cologne, and my particular like weird nerdy beer specialty is like historic German sours. Like Gose is my favorite beer ever. And so I got to go to Leipzig and taste the original Gose, or what it was revitalized for. So it was a trip that changed my life, and it was definitely pretty intense, and Breakside and Pink Boots made that happen.
Sounds amazing. It sounds like an amazing journey, and like so many cool things that you got to see.
So
yep,
jealous.
Exactly.
Brian's so jealous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know I traveled to Germany back in like, oh my gosh, 2006. And it was kind of before I got more into craft beer. Now I'm like, oh, there's so much I missed out. I went to like the Hofbräuhaus, I was like, there's so much I missed out on because I wasn't really going for that reason at the time, but I would love to go back sometime.
Yeah, you didn't get to nerd out as much as you might now.
Yeah, exactly. So you also have gotten to play a fun role with the Shebrew Festival, and I'd love to hear more about that event and how you partner with them.
Yeah, I actually have an email at some point. I can like look at some stats for it, but Shebrew is really cool. It started off based off of a couple different female homebrew based competitions, and it's a national competition. I can't remember how many entries we've gotten over the last couple of years. I got an email today that we're up to like 30, which is pretty great because, just especially in the after times, or, post plague times or current plague times, it's hard to get people to see posters and do stuff. So that's exciting, but it's a pretty unique opportunity for people to, oops, sorry. I'm sitting in my car, if you couldn't tell.
You haven't moved for a while.
Really quick, but, oh, I killed the light. There's one.
Please don't kill your battery.
I know.
Just for us.
I think something that was like initially scary for some like female homebrewers is they're like, oh, I like to homebrew with my partner, and you know, I'm a lady homebrewer, but I don't do it just by myself. I do it with my husband, or I do it with whoever. And the whole point about it is not to be just like only women doing it without, you know, in conjunction to the way that they would normally brew, but it's just like a cool access point for people. And the winner gets to brew a beer at Breakside with me. And obviously that didn't happen in 2020 because it was like the last weekend that anything happened. But the other cool part of it is that a lot of local home brewers get to have their beer on tap for the festival. So then, you know, they get to interact with the public and people get to taste. And then there's a little award ceremony for that. So people can, homebrewers can win for the judged portion. And then they get to have like a People's Choice Beer of the Day. And then there's also as many female professional brewers and cider makers as we can get in contact with get to have their beer on tap that day too. So it's just like a really fun, cool, sort of like magical experience. And then it's previously been hosted at like a female owned coffee shop, and there's like female security guards, and, you know, definitely like over the top, but everyone's just like so proud and so excited, and it's a really fun event.
That sounds amazing.
Speaking of festivals, both Von Ebert and Breakside have won a few GABF medals. Were you involved with that process at all? And if so, can you talk about what it was like?
Yeah. So that Goza that I told you guys about, I've been working on it for about 4 years. In 2020, that actually won gold at GABF. So that was a particularly special one because I put so much work into it, literally traveling around the world.
Went to Germany for this beer.
We actually had for my portion of the brewery, the research and development program, we have taste panels every Monday. So we'll go through every single beer that we make, and we'll, you know, does it have enough hops in the boil? Did we put them in the right place? Are the BUs okay? Should we change the malt bill? We like dig through every single part of it. And I just brewed Goza again, and we talked about it in taste panel today. And it's funny because like something wins a gold medal and it feels so special, and it's like, it's such a big deal. But then I'm like, okay, so let's taste it today. Does it have enough salt? Do we like this? Do we like that? So it's, you know, these beers everything's changing. Like you could make a beer that is beautiful and wins a gold medal and then could never ever win again. So when you win something like that, it's a really big deal, and we all know that. And it just takes so much work and so much time to you know, perfect. But it also seems like a temporary perfection, right? Because raw materials are always changing and industry changes. So like you're making beers that fit into a category, but you know, every year everyone else's beers change. Like if you're entering beer into like a fruit beer category, 1 year it could all be passion fruit beers that people are entering, or, you know, it's just like, it's a target that like moves, but it's still like traditional beers like Helles and Dunkel and all those types of things. Like obviously you want them to be the same all the time, but like right when I popped on, you guys were talking about decoction. You know, when people are learning more about like perfecting their beers and have access to more, I don't know, if you had never decocted a Dunkel before and you're like, you feel like it's missing a little bit, and then all of a sudden you figure out a way to make it work on your system, or you understand a little bit better and you can figure that out. You know, people are stepping it up, and, you know, that's obviously not an traditionally American style beer. So we're always trying to like reach for that. But ranting aside, those competitions are a really, really big deal. And when you win something like that, it's so special. And Von Ebert won the like biggest award, I would say. You know, the category, the IPA they won in, is the biggest category. I think it's still the biggest category, if not, you know, in the top 2 biggest category. And And when you're going through the award ceremony, they, go through category 1 through 84 or whatever it is now. And I don't remember what category IPA is, but they make that regardless of the number. It's the very last announced category. So Sam from Von Ebert went to the bathroom and was like, wasn't thinking anything of it. And it was the last category and they won and he didn't know. And he walked back out and they were like, we won IPA. And he was like, stop fucking with me, because he's like, there's no way we won. And, because you just don't expect to win. And they won that. So it was a pretty cool, special thing for them too.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It's like the best picture at the Oscars, right? They save it till the end and then do the IPA category.
Yep.
404 entries in American IPA this year. I want to say Hazy was right there.
Hazy was really close.
427. Hazy beat it out.
Woohoo!
Yeah. What is this world coming to, Brian?
Yeah, and it's funny. There are some other categories. I don't recall which, but Kolsch and German Pilsner or something like that. There was I also judged GABF. And so when you go there, you don't ever, you might judge a category that your beer is in, but you don't judge a flight that your beer is in. So everyone judges a round of IPA, whether you have it, if your beer is in the main category or not. So it's if we have Wanderlust IPA in a category, we'll judge a flight and they know that it's not on there. So we'll just do a first round, because there's just so many beers that everyone has to cut through them all. And last year, I remember everyone had to do a round of German Pilsner, which is great, but there's just so much of the beer.
Yeah. Those Pilsners and Kolsch's, and they're really starting to come back into existence. A lot of people are really, making them a lot more than they used to, which is awesome to see. I really like those styles too. Brian, any other questions we wanted to address from the Q&A before we kind of wrap things up?
Yeah, I didn't have one from the Q&A, but I wanted to ask, what was that judging process like this year? Because they didn't they do it as, I guess the awards were just part of CBC this year. The judging process was probably pretty similar to years past, huh?
I'm how many years have we judged in a pandemic? It's all become a blur. Two. Yeah, because 22, 21, yeah. So yeah. I've been judging it for 4 or 5 years, and the pandemic version of the judging, it's generally judged in the convention center it'll just be a couple days leading up to the actual festival for GABF. But with the pandemic judging, they've been doing, I think, 3 different weeks. So you go for a week, and they keep it so there's only approximately 30 judges there at a time. And instead of being in the convention center, they just do it in the Brewers Association warehouse in
Denver,
outside of Denver. Right? Pardon?
In Denver too, right?
Yeah. It's in Superior. Sorry if I'm not answering your questions. I'm not ignoring you. I just couldn't hear you.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. But yeah, so it'll be 30 judges a week, and you just judge for a week from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is a lot of judging, because generally there's so many people there at once, they can get through everything in 3 days. And so, yeah, it's a big thing. And then, so you'll just I didn't see a lot of my judge friends because we all went in different week pods, but yeah, they just try to keep pods of people together, and there's 4 people instead of 6 at a table, and you're just all separated out and wear face masks, and we also had to wear face shields and a bunch of different great safety protocols. They did a really good job and managed a lot of people, and yeah, Superior is right where the wildfire was. I was wondering if the Brewers Association was going to be okay. I haven't heard anything. I don't think it got over there, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just blown away that you would taste that long. I have so many questions about how to stave off palate fatigue and stuff like that. Oh my God. But there is one question from the chat that I did want to answer. Do you know if that family tree of Portland breweries is available? We have a bunch of viewers from the Portland area.
I bet it's on the Oregon Historical website. I can't speak. Historical Society website. I bet it's on there. I haven't looked it up, but it was I mean, at this point, inaccurate because a lot of stuff is closed, but I haven't actually looked it up, but I can try to find it and send it your way too.
That would be
That
awesome.
Sounds really cool. All right, so last question, and I know it might feel a little bit heavy, but I think it's a really important question to ask from one woman in the industry to another. What stories do you think aren't getting told in the craft beer industry right now?
I think stories that I don't know and I haven't heard that I have definitely been, eye-opening is, I think, like, I'm going to answer that in two different sections. I think that, like, as women in the industry, we all knew what was going on. So when there was this like big reckoning happening, we're kind of looking around and we're like, why is anyone surprised? Like, we've been saying something, not everyone said something because it wasn't a safe place for them to say something, but we all knew because we tell each other and find ways to survive, with one another and what companies to work for and who to avoid and things like that. But I think it's really powerful that people are having a safe place and voice and people are trying to listen. But people who, I personally don't know a ton of BIPOC brewers, and I think that there's platforms like the Michael Jackson scholarship where you can physically see and get to know people who are trying to get into the industry or are in the industry and are, having more access to education. And, it's unfortunate that some people, whether it's based on your sexual orientation, skin color, gender, identity, any of those things, like, you obviously don't want anyone to be in a situation where they have to fight harder to be in the industry or to have a voice. And, being someone who is not a person in that situation, like, I want to know how to uplift and support and help people and like actually do it, not just say that I want to hear it. But I think it's hard to, I guess what I'm beating around the bush is, like, I have dealt with difficult situations, but I just don't understand. So what other people go through who have to fight more for, space. And I want people to know that they deserve to take up space and they deserve to be here. And I guess that's not really, really directly answering your question, but sort of just like my outward thought about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. I think just letting people know that there is space for them in the community and making it a welcoming and inclusive place is so important. It makes me think of something we're doing with our sister company, City Brew Tours. This is the second year that we're doing our Talent on Tap scholarship, which is actually open right now for applications. This is specifically for women of color who would like to join the industry or who are in the industry and would like to kind of find a higher place within it. And we awarded 3 different women last year with the scholarship, and it's been great to see kind of where they've gone with it and the kind of studying that they've done with it, and really excited to see what applications we get this year and who we can help to support. And even everybody who didn't receive the scholarship, we tried to think of ways we could continue to support them and include them in trainings and things that we were doing as a company. So it's so important to think and spend time having these conversations about how we can make the community more inclusive for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm a part of the diversity and equity committee for the Brewers Guild, and something that like we're dealing with is like a lot of people. So there's like 2 different sides of it, right? Like you want people who aren't just white men on a committee for diversity and equity, right? But then you also it's also not any like BIPOC person's responsibility to be the one enforcing diversity and equity, because it's not like, I feel like this as a woman sometimes, especially with things that have been going on recently, it's like people are like, what do you want us to do? How do you want us to get involved? And it's like, why does it have to be my responsibility for you to like treat me well and provide me space. So I definitely feel like that, like being on the diversity committee, like I feel sometimes like it's not really my place, but I also want to provide the space. So I think that's something that I'm figuring out myself, and like how to be a part of something, but not be louder than the voices that need to be amplified. So yeah, something that I'm figuring out and, you know, trying to learn and listen. And there's a lot of access, or, you know, a lot of platforms. We're Maddie, who works at Von Ebert, and I are going to do the Brave Noise beer sometime in the beginning of this year. We tried to do it at the end of last year, but we just couldn't get all of our ducks in a row. But for that specifically, like you have to provide information about like how you're going to contribute back into the beer industry. And I think that that's a really good way to start, because it's not just showing up, it's like showing up and you have to follow through with it.
You have to post your code of conduct publicly. Yep. Like they've done such good work with that movement. It's so admirable.
Yep.
Craig had a great follow-up question. Speaking of stories not being told, are there any beer-related books you would recommend from a women's point of view, or written exclusively by women in the beer industry?
I know that there was the book that was just released. I don't remember the author's name, but it's something along the lines of the
A Woman's Place is in the Brew House by Tara Nurin.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I know a lot of women in the industry have been purchasing it, and she actually just did a tour around Portland, but I wasn't in town. But I actually don't know of any books specifically. So no, I don't have a good answer for that.
I feel like that was the first of its kind.
Yeah,
for sure. Mm-hmm. Like a book written by a woman about like women's place within the history of beer.
I think I gotta look this up. I want to say Kim Jordan, the founder of New Belgium, wrote a book. And there's so many good stories. Yeah. She wrote Entrepreneurs Unleashed. Nope, that's an interview. I'm not just gonna wildly Google here and read off things, but like there's so many good stories. Carol Stout should write a book. I'd love to hear Natalie from Russian River's perspective. Lauren from New Belgium, talk about somebody that's had an impact on the industry, kept alive the longest living sour culture in American sour beer. Like, there's a lot of good stories to be told, and it's a shame that there aren't, especially the brewers publications, that they're not given a format for these women.
I think that there is like, so there's a Pink Boots conference in North Carolina in February, and I'm talking with Tanya Cornett from 10 Barrel and Megan Parisi from Boston Beer. And I think something that is maybe, not a book version, but there is a lot of audio recording, or maybe this is part of like something that is unfortunate. Like a lot of times when people write articles about like women in beer, it's sort of like, because you're a woman in beer, not necessarily paying attention to your accolades. But maybe that's something that we can sort of like step up in media, when you're reading articles in New Brewer. A person who actually has quite a bit of literature written is Lindsay Barr, who used to be from New Belgium. She did the sensory and like QA program there and started a company called Draft Lab. And she goes to a lot of talks, and she's in a bunch of brewing magazines all the time. So yeah, I think that maybe it's more like journal articles and things like that you'd probably be able to read, publications for women, or, audio versions of CBC talks and things like that. I think that's right now, like the things that without diving into it, that's sort of like where my head goes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been wonderful. Despite the troubles we had, technical difficulties, no worries. It turned out to be, I had a lot of fun.
It really was like Christmas morning when you showed up. We're like,
Christmas
here. This is great.
I just had this like feeling in my stomach. I don't have my work email. I like don't get emails after a certain time of day from my work email. And I was like, I feel like I should just check it. And I was like, no. So sorry.
No, I'm so happy you're able to join us.
Thank you for disrupting your work-life balance. And
I appreciate you guys wanting to talk, even though I messed it up.
no, this was wonderful.
Our pleasure.
Julie, final thoughts. Natalie, do you have anything to plug? Please, where can people find more about Breakside distribution? Where can people find Breakside beer?
We are in some random places that sometimes I'll get text messages from friends and like they're sitting at a bar in Montana drinking a beer that we just freshly kegged, which is pretty cool. But we're mostly on the West Coast. Excuse me. We're in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, some spots in California, Colorado, and then sort of just random distribution spots from there. So yeah.
Awesome. That was great.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for scrambling and joining us here.
Yeah, I
really appreciate it. It was a great discussion.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's wrap up. Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks
so much.
All right, Julie. Final thoughts.
Yes, final thoughts. That was really fun. I always love chatting with women in the industry, as you can tell. So this is my last night as co-host. I'm very sad about it, but I know you'll be in good hands for the last couple of nights of the live stream. So hope you guys all have a lot of fun. I'll miss you and hopefully see you next year.
Yes. Julie, thank you so much for co-hosting. And for those people at home, Julie does a ton behind the scenes. As she mentioned, she is our experiences manager and did so much work helping us get beers ready for this and organize this whole thing and helping me with scripts. So Julie, thank you so much for all the hard work you did in getting us ready to do these awesome streams. And thanks for co-hosting.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always a fun time.
Awesome. So you can find more at brewvana.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Brewvana. We will be back. I will be back tomorrow. Ben will be back tomorrow, but I will be joined by a new co-host. Spoiler alert, I'm just going to have the same co-host for the last 2 nights. But if you tuned in last year, or if you had the Hanukkah box, you will be in for a pleasant surprise as you will see a familiar face for my final co-host. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat. Thanks to Ben for moderating. Thanks once again to Natalie for joining us and having an awesome conversation with us. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.
Oh, no, I don't have my outro music.
I don't know how it goes. Bye.